One of the duties that's listed in the discipline for the Pastor-Parish Relations Committee revolves around evaluation. Let me read for you the fifth responsibility, the fifth duty of your role as a part of the Pastor-Parish Relations Committee: to provide evaluation at least annually for the use of the pastor and staff in ongoing effective ministry and for identifying continuing educational needs and plans. Evaluation. It is an important part of your role. Now, we're in the process of developing instruments and tools to assist you, and they are in the process of being revised in cooperation with our Conference Board of Ordained Ministry. But we as members of the Cabinet, I as your bishop, am deeply concerned about our evaluation and the process that we use for evaluating the work of the pastor. Let me say a couple of things about that. First of all, honesty is absolutely essential. But it has to be honesty that is tempered with grace and love. Honesty that's based on mutual trust and confidence in one another. Somewhere a long time ago, as I was coming along in my own ministry as a pastor of a local church, someone suggested to me that what the Pastor-Parish Relations Committee is to do and to be is in the evaluation process is not to be an uncritical lover, as if everything the pastor does is just wonderful and fine and you don't want to hurt the pastor in any way. That's being an uncritical lover. On the other hand, Pastor-Parish Relations Committee is not to be an unloving critic, that is, criticizing everything that the pastor does and everything that the pastor says without tempering that with the love of Christ. Instead, the Pastor-Parish Relations Committee is to be a loving critique of the ministry and leadership of the pastor, understanding that we're all people who are called by grace and sustained by grace, and that we are people who need to continue to grow. At the same time that I'm encouraging members of the Pastor-Parish Relations Committee to be honest and loving in their critique, I'm also encouraging our clergy. Clergy have to be open and receptive to the responses that they receive from the Pastor-Parish Relations Committee. I always appreciate the opportunity to learn, to find out where the shortcomings are and to find ways that I can improve in leadership and preaching and teaching and whatever other role I may be called upon to play. I hope that our clergy would be open and receptive for the sole purpose of increasing and strengthening the fruitful ministry that they can provide. Ultimately, it's all about the overall health and vitality of the local church, about accomplishing our mission, about working together, lay and clergy, on behalf of the mission of the church and our deep and passionate commitment to be followers of Jesus Christ. Now, one of the best ways, and I think one of the most important ways that we can do effective evaluation is to be able to set clear expectations every year. The Pastor-Parish Relations Committee needs to sit down with the pastor with the committee, and map out the year. What are the goals? What are the plans? What are the expectations that you have as a Pastor-Parish Relations Committee of your pastor? Write them down. Come to agreements about them. The pastor will have expectations and goals that he or she will set for the local church and for his or her own ministry in the life that is to unfold in the coming months. That way, when we have those clear expectations and goals, we have a standard by which we can hold one another accountable. If we set a certain goal and at the end of the year the pastor has not achieved that or the church hasn't lived up to its expectations, then we can have conversation. What went wrong? What do we need to do? How can we improve? And we can begin to build toward very healthy, very fruitful ministry in the future. But without those expectations, the evaluations that we provide become shallow and baseless. So I would encourage you early on in the conversation that you have with your pastor, perhaps in that meeting after the appointments are made in July of each year, to sit down and work through those expectations so that come the spring of the year, you'll be able to look back and see how far the expectations have been achieved. Now, your assessment of your pastor must be done in conversational form. Again, it has to be open and it has to be honest, but it's always geared toward advancing the health of the church and improving the ministry of the pastor. I believe that cannot happen without some very meaningful conversations. And then, following those conversations, following the evaluations that are conducted each year, one of the responsibilities that you have as a committee along with your pastor is to help develop a plan for continuing education or for spiritual formation. I want to encourage you as a Pastor-Parish Relations Committee to make sure that you provide the resources that the pastor will need to take advantage of those continuing education classes. For instance, if you decide in your evaluation that the pastor really needs some work on sermon delivery or preparation or perhaps in pastoral care or administration, find those workshops and seminars that can be helpful for that pastor, and then hold that pastor accountable. Provide the resources, provide the time, and then get the feedback and make sure that what's learned gets applied in the life of the pastor and of the church. Expect to see results. I encourage our pastors to take advantage of continuing education events, but also to make sure that those events make an impact on the way they live and how they act as pastors and how they lead as pastors in the life of the local church. Evaluation is absolutely critical to helping us move from mediocrity and status quo to being the kind of faithful and fruitful servants and disciples that Jesus calls us to be in the community where you serve, in the community where your church is located, and around the world.